Hi there. I'm excited to share this with you. I'll be releasing one chapter of my first book every week until the entire story is complete. You can listen while you're working, driving, or just kicking back in your favorite spot. Some chapters will be short, others a bit longer, but every one of them is free to enjoy. If it's not your thing, that's totally okay, no hard feelings. But if you like it, feel free to tune in each week or even share it with a friend. Can't wait for the next chapter? No problem. Scan the QR code on your screen to purchase the full book on Amazon. Happy listening.
Chapter 9. Confrontation. Now we're God. He inquires audibly with his hands at 2 and 10 on the wheel. Just drive, you say. Well, okay, but it is not my fault if I end up away from where you need me to be. Just remember, I asked. Chad pulls out of the garage and down the driveway. His mind is aflutter, hoping that he will make the right choice of where to go. This will be his first official encounter if he is able to find something this time around. In his mind, Chad has to consider the fact that God's ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. It is entirely possible that the Lord would send him out for some other purpose than actual crime fighting. He could be going out just to get practice on the finer details of being a superhero, such as dressing or traveling or stealth movement, etc. God could also want him to meet someone who will help him out in the future. Anything is possible, and Chad refuses to get his heart set on anything. This time, he is truly letting God have his way in waiting for instructions. Even in his waiting for instructions, God is having him make the decision of which way to go. In a way, this causes Chad not to be able to establish a comfort zone. He cannot just sit back waiting for God to speak, but at the same time he has to remember to move only as God instructs. Chad is sure that God is doing it for a reason but struggles to figure out what that reason could be. Chad instinctively drives toward the area of town closest to the D-line. He randomly navigates, turning and twisting throughout the area. Unlike previous times, however, he does not take time to look for crime at all. He is simply waiting for God to tell him what he should do. Scripture pops up randomly in his mind, and he uses them to help pass the time while he waits. It not only kills time but also helps him to bolster his courage and confidence in God. He especially is reminded of David's mighty men. He rides around for an hour or so before deciding to park somewhere and conserve gas. Every time he asks God if he can go back home, he feels the answer is no. Sometimes, the voice of God is more of a feeling than actual words. Time passes, and each minute whittles away at Chad's resolve until finally, he receives instructions to get dressed in the car. Chad does not think that getting dressed in the car is the smartest thing he can do, considering that the car is registered in his name. However, he is not willing to fight with God about such trivial matters. As inconspicuously as possible, he slips into his uniform, hoping that God will not make him drive while fully dressed. Chad gets his wish and is told get out and walk. Formed habits die hard. Chad realizes that he is parked at the same gas station near the D-line that he did when he first started trying to find crime. All this time sitting there and he had not even realized it. This time, however, he is to walk toward the business district in the opposite direction of the deserted line. Chad thinks as he walks, at least it is nighttime and most businesses are closed, so I won't be running into many people as I walk. This is still a little embarrassing. I have to admit that when I used to watch the other heroes on TV, I did not realize how socially uncomfortable walking around in the outfit is when there is no crime going on. What time is it anyway? He reaches into his pocket and pulls out his cell phone. A look of astonishment springs upon his face. What? It is already 10:45. I've been killing time for almost 3 hours. Wow, well, at least now I am moving around in a specific direction. But even still, how long will it be before I get to where I am going? And when I get there, I wonder how long I will have to wait there before something happens or I am allowed to go home. Chad puzzles over as he walks. It is another night with just the right amount of heat and the right amount of cool breeze to make the temperature perfect. The part of the city that Chad is walking into now is the area that feels safe from the wiles of the lawless zone and its inhabitants. It is close to the D-line but far enough away that a sense of normalcy has been established. It's like being out of the danger zone. Sure, no place is completely safe, and all criminals are not from or living in the lawless zone, but this area is the beginning of normal criminal activity and normal police services. Chad walks while sort of complaining in his mind about how uncomfortable he feels. I am wearing this outfit and walking down the street. That does not scream super cool hero. It doesn't even seem to be professional, if you ask me. How am I going to make a hasty escape if things get too hairy? Or what if the criminals are about to get away in a car? What am I supposed to do, run after them on foot? I'm no Zip. I can't move super fast. For that matter, I have no superpowers whatsoever. What am I doing? Obeying the will of God, that's what you are doing. Yeah. I am obeying the will of God. That's it. And if he be for me, then there is no one in the world that can stand against me. Time passes in increments as he contemplates his fate and well-being. At some moments, he is taken away from his thoughts by something he sees as he walks. He remains semi-vigilant, keeping an eye out for crime but half expecting nothing to happen. Even if nothing happens, he can say for sure that he was obedient to what he thinks he heard God saying. The street is sort of dark, and the buildings are all separate. Some of them are close enough to create alleyways while others look more like a single building floating in the middle of a parking lot. There are lights in various areas, but those lights make shadows and thus create darkness to offset the light. The newer buildings seem to be made of stucco, but some of the buildings are more antique and are actually made of bricks. Chad examines his surroundings as he walks and even finds a shop or two that he did not know existed. He looks into their windows to see what type of things they have to offer, never once giving thought to the fact that he is wearing a mask and looking into windows. That is a surefire way to get someone to call the police out. Chad does not see anyone anyway. He moves on down the road, looking down alleys and enjoying the open space. He looks toward one of the buildings, a little up the street, and sees that it has burglar bars on all the windows and doors. The strange thing is that under the burglar bars, he can see that part of the window looks different than the other. His detective skills tell him that one portion of the window was probably recently replaced. Chad moves in to check it out and see what is inside. The sign outside says, Weapon Max. Chad checks his phone once more as he moves in on the building. Wow, 11 already. Chad thinks. He knows that it has just been 15 minutes since he last checked, which isn't much to him, but the fact that he is out walking the streets at such a late hour and the total time that he has spent trying to be obedient to God hits him as he stares at the 11 on his screen. He puts his phone away and continues walking to check out the strange window. Swishing on his hip is the meteor hammer that adorns his outfit. He approaches the window, and sure enough, one glass pane is slightly more tinted than the other. Chad thinks, this is no way to run a business. Presentation is everything. The smooth shiny glass surface glistens in the moonlight as Chad compares the two shades of glass, all the while thinking about how bored he must be to be comparing glass color on the store window. The reflection of all that is behind him clearly shows forth on the glass surface. He can see behind himself even better than he can see inside the store. He begins to sort of phase out as he looks into the glass and drifts deeper into thought. A thin strip of light catches his attention as it stretches forth inside the very back of the store and begins to widen. Chad sees it but does not think much of it. When it stops growing, shadows begin to cross through the light. Suddenly, Chad realizes that someone is inside the store, moving around in the back of the store. Chad looks around and sees no cars in the employee area and notices a closed sign hanging in the front door window. Chad's deductive reasoning leads him to believe that no one should be in the building, but just to be sure, he decides to take a better look. Since the motion is in the rear of the building, Chad walks around to the back of the building to see what is going on. Could this be the moment he has been waiting for? Anxiousness surges from his toes to his fingertips as he makes the walk around the building. Am I ready? Am I ready? God, I need you. Chad whispers to himself. Sounds of busy scurrying meet his ears, and he can tell that they are coming from around the corner just ahead of him. Whispers join the busy sounds of movement, but the words are unintelligible. Chad is almost certain of what he is dealing with now. These are people who are trying to hurry and yet remain quiet. They must be criminals or at least up to no good. Nervously, Chad approaches the corner to get a better look at what is going on. His back is against the wall as if he is shuffling sideways across the ledge of a building. His hands feel the brick of the wall as he scoots himself forward slowly, trying not to make a sound. The slightest sound could start a conflict before he even has time to take all things into account. Sweat begins to form on his forehead, but the mask absorbs it before it can form a drop and roll down his face. Knowing that his uniform is white, Chad slowly scooches his head up to the corner to try and scope out the scene. Instantly, he notices two guys loading up a large four-wheeled dolly with unknown but seemingly heavy items. Thinking it through, he remembers that the building is a weapons shop, so it is highly likely that those are weapons. From the corner of his eye, he thinks he sees a shadow disappearing in the direction of the back of the building, but he can't help keeping his eyes fixed on the two guys that he believes are carrying weapons. This is the moment of truth. All the training and agonizing adds up to this very instant. It is at this time that Chad truly realizes that he is not ready. This awareness bubbles up from the very soles of his feet, past his calves, surges through his thighs, drags through his loins, fills his stomach, explodes in his chest, and saturates his brain. It takes over everything. He panics mentally. Think, Chad. They haven't seen you yet. Just slowly turn around and walk away. No, run away, they have guns. Why did I come out here? What was I thinking? I can't compete with guns. And what for? For some stuff. Stuff that does not even belong to me. I could understand if someone's life was on the line, but this is just stupid. I'm not going out there to get killed. Cold feet at its worst. Chad completely forgets why he is doing what he is doing in the face of fear and danger. His mind races, trying to find a way to escape. Suddenly, a scripture comes to mind and pours forth from his mouth. God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. I'm not trying to be funny, but I swear I heard talking. Reggie says while turning toward the sound of Chad's voice. Phil looks up as well to see what the sound was. Chad cannot believe he spoke out loud. But that is the least of his problems, for at this moment, he can feel his feet walking forward, ripping him away from the safety of his hiding spot. It is very reminiscent of that time in the alley where he took a beating, but something feels slightly different this time. Who are you? And what do you think you're doing? Phil chirps with surprise. Chad can hear the question, but the response is not his. Jesus says, when you see me, you have seen the Father. The words I say to you I do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father, living in me, who is doing his work. Chad mumbles. His voice is not the same as he speaks, his words are slow, low, and carry a gruff accent. Did that make any sense to you? Phil says, looking at Reggie with a puzzled countenance. You are all kinds of creepy. Whispering from the shadows at people doing bad things and carrying weapons could get you hurt. I'm not trying to be funny, but, fool, you walked up at the wrong time. But I suppose, in that outfit, you were probably looking for this kind of trouble. Reggie threatens as he cracks his knuckles. Reggie is quick to put two and two together. He may not have seen Chad before, but he knows that the outfit means one of two things. He must either be a hero or a hijacker. Either way, this is the part that he lives for and was even secretly hoping for. If things were to go too well, he would have to find his fun elsewhere. Chad is still in a strange mode of speaking as he grabs the meteor hammer from his hip and lets it unravel. Clank! The hammer hits the ground and sort of rolls a few inches forward and to the right. Chad steps forward with his right foot and mumbles. When the disciples heard this, they were very astonished and said, "Then who can be saved?" And looking at them, Jesus said to them, "With people this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Ooh, and look. He brought party favors for us. Reggie says as he watches the movement of the meteor hammer. And just what do you think you are going to do with that thing, friend? Phil, who is not too excited about this latest development, pulls himself together and joins in the verbal assault. I don't know what he was planning to do with it, but I know where you can store that thing when you are done with him. Go get him. I'll finish up here real quick so you know who won't get upset. Chad begins to spin the meteor hammer with his right arm. Inside, the fear is still present, but now that he is out, there is no turning back. Even if there was a way to get out, the strange thing that brought him out with boldness would likely prevent his escape. No choice but to go forward and try the awesome new moves that he has been practicing. Reggie knows that Phil is using him as a guinea pig to see how tough this strange man is, but he couldn't care less. Normally, he would protest and tell Phil to handle his own issues, but this just looks like too much fun to him. He has the advantage because of reach, if he knows how to use that thing. Reggie thinks. But once I get in close, this will all be over. Now how to force his hand and test him out. Chad decides to throw a warning blow toward Reggie because he can see that Reggie seems to want to fight. Perhaps if he can scare him a bit, then he would not be so eager to knuckle up. In mid-spin he thrusts his arm forward, causing the meteor hammer to strike to the right of Reggie's head and, with a smooth motion, causes it to return and go back to spinning in a circle. A warning comes before destruction, and pride comes before a fall. Chad mumbles. Reggie would never have given a warning shot, so he fails to be afraid of the feint attack. Instead, he takes it as a sign that Chad cannot hit what he is aiming at. In a way, it is Chad's fault for pulling too far away from Reggie's head. Reggie raises his arms into guard position, with each hand balled up into a fist and those fists slightly below his nose line so that he can still see. He begins his charge while remaining watchful of the weapon in Chad's right hand. I'll be quick. If he throws it again, I will dodge it if necessary and follow it back in. That's when I will give him the tune-up of a lifetime. Reggie strategizes in his mind. His feet beat the ground fiercely, trying to make up the distance, but just as he expected, Chad launches another strike, and it is visibly off course as well. Now's my chance. Reggie thinks. He continues forward without altering his course, knowing that the trajectory of the meteor hammer will take it away from him and give him time to make his way in before another strike is thrown. Veer left. Reggie hears, and suddenly the meteor that was not supposed to get near him at all is in his face and hastily completing course. Thunk! The metal ball connects squarely with Reggie's forehead, causing him to fall backward onto his rear end. Kind of dazed and confused, he wonders what just happened. He is sure that he was not in the pathway of the hard metal sphere. Looking up, he sees Chad standing there just twirling the meteor hammer as if he never made a move at all. I'm not trying to be funny, but that was quite surprising. To tell the truth, I am still not sure of what exactly happened just now. Reggie discloses. He gets up and dusts himself off. Okay, now let's try this again and see if we can't get different results. His voice raises abruptly at the end of his proclamation. If a thief is caught breaking in at night and is struck a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. Mutters Chad. Phil begins to wonder whether this costumed hero wannabe is just talking nonsense or if he really means the things he is saying. Is that some kind of threat? Phil says excitedly while continuing to load things on the dolly. Reggie rushes in again, but this time with a shorter distance to cover. His head is still ringing a bit from the blow he took. However, he cannot afford to allow himself to show Chad any weakness, or he knows the fight is over already. As quickly as possible, Chad thrust forth 2 more straight strikes at Reggie's chest, but this time, Reggie dodges them both just in time while continuing to charge in. Chad realizes that the time between his thrusts is a disadvantage, a fact that Reggie had not only realized but was counting on. Reggie's right fist comes streaking in directly toward Chad's face. Chad can tell that the punch is an uncommonly fast one, but somehow to him, it is as if it is slow motion. He dodges it with ease. Likewise, the follow-up left is effortlessly avoided. It is so easy that he is able to keep his meteor hammer in motion as he evades the attacks. Swoosh, swash, swift, a quick right, strong left, then leg check combo completely misses Chad, and yes, the meteor hammer is still in motion. Reggie sort of stumbles back in awe of what he is experiencing. He loves street fighting and was raised in the boxing ring, so he is quite surprised by his inability to get even one hit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord shall deliver them from them all. Chad asserts in his mumbled voice while still moving and keeping his meteor hammer flowing. His movements are very pronounced. Not only is his arm twirling the meteor hammer, but he spins and rocks his torso in ways that cause the ball and rope to stay in motion. It is similar to how someone keeps a hula hoop in motion with the whole body core. "Whoa," says Reggie. "I'm not trying to be funny, but who are you?" Chad answers before he even knows what he is telling them. "I am just a messenger. A servant freakishly devoted to his master. I am Jesus Freak." Reggie uses conversation to try and time Jesus Freak's movements. There's only one more option that he thinks could possibly work to give him the advantage, but it will take timing, luck, and distraction. "Jesus Freak, huh? Is that really what you want us to call you? You know, on this planet, we consider that an insult." He purposely makes himself seem as if he is no longer a threat with his body posture and plays the role of someone just trying to have a conversation as he continues. "So what can we do to make this conflict between you and us go away? You tell me, and we will do it. Just let us go. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil." Jesus Freak states. Yeah, but what does? "Ah!" In mid-statement, Reggie runs full speed at Jesus Freak just as the hammer swings down. Instead of punching or kicking, this time he grabs him from the front and yells, "Phil, get over here. Knock this freak show out while I got him." He has him in a bear hug, immobilizing his arms and limiting his response option. Jesus Freak just looks Reggie in the eye and says, "That's Jesus Freak." Meanwhile, Phil jumps up and dashes over toward the skirmish. These are his type of odds. Jesus Freak offers no resistance to the bear hug that Reggie has clamped onto him. Reggie taunts, "Not so tough now, are you?" with a small chuckle in anticipation of what is about to happen. Those who dig a pit will fall in it. Those who roll a stone will have it turned back on them. Phil uses the momentum of his quick approach to lean in with his right side, thrusting his right fist at the back of the head of Jesus Freak. In short order, Jesus Freak turns toward the punch, placing the back of Reggie's head between him and the punch. It's too late for Phil to stop his punch, and Jesus Freak simultaneously forces his forehead down into Reggie's face. The two hits connect at the same time, effectively making his head the meat of a Spam sandwich. Reggie's grip loosens as he loses consciousness and crumbles to the ground. Mark steps out of the back door with another load of guns and looks up to see Reggie as he slams to the pavement. Jesus Freak is slowly walking toward Phil with his meteor hammer dragging the ground. Phil looks around anxiously for a weapon nearby or something that can save him. He knows he has no chance in a fair fight if Reggie went down so easily. In looking for a weapon, his eye happens upon Mark standing in the shadows, putting a bullet into one of the handguns they are in the process of stealing. Wait a minute. Phil says, putting both hands' palms facing out in front of him. "Surely we can work something out. Right, Mr. Jesus Freak?" As he talks, he slowly backs away, trying to keep the attention focused on him. The gold in his mouth shines as he pleads and somehow makes the rings on his fingers more noticeable. Mark looks through the sights of his gun. He makes sure that Jesus Freak is between the rear sight dots and that the front sight dot is right on his head. His steady and calm hand holds position as his index finger pulls back the trigger. Bang! The shot rings out, cutting through the night silence. The small puff of smoke clears from before the eyes of Mark. There still in his sights is the head of his target. Mark expected him to fall instantly, but sometimes, people don't fall right away, so Mark is not too alarmed. "Take that, freak!" Phil yells excitedly. He just knows that victory is in their hands with that shot. Suddenly, the meteor hammer is lifted from the ground and put into motion again. Jesus Freak quickly turns toward Mark. "You missed," he says while thrusting his hammer in Mark's direction. Mark is stunned and does not react as quickly as he should. The gun flies out of his hand into the background darkness. This snaps Mark back into the affray. Mark's low, raspy voice sounds off. "You won't stop me, not now, not ever." He charges in to get close. He knows that if he takes time to look for the gun, the strangely dressed individual before him would make short work of Phil. Not only so, but he only loaded one bullet because of time constraints and his confidence in his ability to hit his target. It would take too much time to look for and load the gun. Jesus Freak ignores the charging miscreant and hurls his hammer toward Phil. Phil has no idea how to block it or get out of the way of it, so he just flinches and waits for the hit. His eyes squint and a grimace crosses his face as all his muscles tense up. "Umph!" he blurts as the hammer's force pushes into his abdomen. It knocks out his wind and makes him feel sick in the stomach. Jesus Freak watches as he doubles over and falls to his knees. Mark quickly approaches from the right side, and Jesus Freak turns to engage him. Unbeknownst to them all, another shadow lurks in the background, observing all that is going on. Mark swings a right-left combo, which Jesus Freak dodges just in time. The left, however, grazes his shoulder and shifts his balance. Mark picks up on the loss of balance and presses in his attack harder. Weaving and dodging, Jesus Freak is forced backward while looking for a chance to make his counterstrike. Bam! One of the punches lands in the center of his chest. He should have been able to step back and dodge, but his foot would not move. Dodge, parry, dodge, stumble. Why can't I move out of the way all of a sudden? Jesus Freak thinks. He looks down to find that his leg is being held in place by Reggie. The adrenaline coursing through his body must have somehow made him unable to feel when he was grabbed. As far as he remembers, Reggie was laid out cold. This is not the time to think about such things. Now that he knows he is being held, he can feel the pressure wrapped around his ankle. He tries to snatch free while fending off Mark's attacks, but he cannot generate enough pull to do so. He waits for Mark to throw another punch with his right arm. He dodges it and uses his free leg to kick Mark in the stomach. The kick does not do much damage, but it does push Mark back enough for Jesus Freak to heel kick Reggie in his stomach. Just as he thought, the grip releases, and he is free. Jesus Freak moves over to put a small distance between Reggie and himself while still keeping an eye on Mark. "You are ruining my plan." "Why? Why? What have I done to you?" "We have to get out of here before the police come, but we will finish you first." Mark threatens while moving in. Dramatically, he throws his punch just as he yells the word first. But the punch is easily avoided and comes to nothing. Jesus Freak capitalizes on the opening and knocks Mark to the ground with a mighty punch. Jesus Freak keeps his eyes on both Reggie and Mark as he says. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. "Look out!" a voice shouts from the shadows. Swoosh! Jesus Freak ducks just as the pole passes through the area that his head was just occupying. While ducking, he sweeps his back leg around. It connects with Phil's front leg and drops him to the floor. It has the added effect of facing Jesus Freak in the direction of his new threat. This is getting kind of ridiculous, he thinks. They just keep getting up. I thought people stayed knocked out once you knocked them out. He lunges forward and delivers a snapping front kick to Phil's face. He hurriedly turns to put his focus back on the other two. They are already on their heels and facing him. Behind them, he sees a strange figure in the background running into the store through the already open back door. He has no time to worry about it now with two violent villains making their way to him. He engages them. Inside the store. "Oh man, where are they?" Those punks moved all my stuff around. I have to hurry before it's too late. Oh wow, that was such a cliché thing to say. Why am I talking to myself? Oh yeah, I'm nervous. The mysterious figure searches the place looking for something that can help him with his latest aspirations. Looking around the place, he sees that most of the heavy artillery is already missing. There it is, he says. He runs forward, grabbing the bag and heads straight for the door. Making his way out of the door, he sees Jesus Freak still handling up on the trio of crooks. Hey, use this! He yells and throws the bag over in Jesus Freak's direction. It hits Reggie in the head and continues forward to the ground in front of Jesus Freak. The bag looks to be filled with flexible plastic sticks. Jesus Freak is puzzled as he looks at the bag. Unfortunately, the bag was not heavy enough to do any damage to Reggie when it hit him. Jesus Freak is becoming tired, as are the three that he is tangling with. Who is the stranger and what is he trying to do? These questions play on Jesus Freak's mind, but he must stay focused on his battle. If only I had a way to make them stay down. Jesus Freak contemplates. He fights but is starting to lose his resolve as the fight seems to go on forever. He starts looking for a way to escape, but his eyes keep taking him back to the bag that lies on the ground near him. Oh, that's it, he thinks as he dodges a punch. Suddenly his hope returns, and his fighting regains its vigor. I gotta get that bag, he thinks. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run, and not be weary, and they shall walk, and not faint. Jesus Freak mumbles in that low tone as he kicks into high gear. All his movements become sharper and full of purpose. He swings his meteor hammer like a lasso above his head, then releases it. It spins forward until it latches onto Mark's leg. Jesus Freak yanks the rope, and Mark falls to the floor. He dodges yet another punch combo from Reggie and answers with an abdominal thrust kick. With both down for a small moment, he knows that Phil will not attack just yet. Jesus Freak uses this time to access the bag on the ground next to him. He grabs a handful of the thin hard plastic strip and stuffs them in his pocket. Thinking it through, he decides to go after Phil. Phil backs up feverishly to avoid the confrontation. It's no use, Jesus Freak is on him in no time. Phil tries to throw a punch, but his punch is dodged and his arm entrapped. Jesus Freak wraps one of the plastic strips around Phil's wrist. What is this? Phil questions. Jesus Freak uses pressure to force Phil to put the arm behind his back, then he grabs the other arm and puts the other side of the plastic strip around it. Quick tie cuffs, Jesus Freak mumbles. He then smashes his elbow into the back of Phil's head, rendering him unconscious. Both Mark and Reggie come lunging in. Why can't we hit you? An exhausted Mark exclaims in frustration. He throws yet another punch that is evaded. Reggie, grab him and hold him in place. I'm not trying to be funny, but we tried that, and it did not work too well for me last time. Reggie retorts. Just do it. Mark yells. Click, clack. The sound of a shotgun shell being racked into the chamber commands the silence of all within earshot. How about don't do it, Reggie? The stranger's cool voice sounds after gaining their attention. Put your hands behind you and turn to face me. You two guy. Mark and Reggie slowly turn to see the barrel of a shotgun facing their general direction. With a shotgun, all it needs to be is in their general direction when he pulls the trigger. It is very likely that neither they nor Jesus Freak would live to see another day. As Mark looks up, he recognizes the face of the man holding the gun. It is a face he has become quite familiar with over the last couple of weeks. They place their hands behind their backs and look at each other with a look that says, well, I guess it is over now. Instantly, Jesus Freak grabs their arms and secures them with the quick tie cuff. He uses extra cuffs to tie them all back to back in a triangle-like structure. Thank you for your assistance, citizen. Jesus Freak says. No. Thank you. The stranger says. My name is Max. I'm the owner of Weapon Max. From the looks of it, you just saved me a whole lot of time, trouble, and money. In fact, he pauses and reflects for a second. He is a stout man. No more than 5'4" and about 210 pounds, a middle-aged man. His glasses are large and practical looking. I actually may have had to close down the business if I lost this much merchandise. Sure, I have certain amounts of insurance coverage, but this would have been devastating. Wow. Wow. Thanks, man, whoever you are. I really owe you. In the distance, the sound of sirens can be heard. Jesus Freak knows that he must leave. He is not well known as a hero, and it is likely that they could apprehend him or expose his identity. He starts to leave but is stopped by a hand grabbing his arm and tightly. Hey, you gotta come back tomorrow at this time so I can give you something more than a thank you. You really saved my livelihood. Max pleads. Thanks, but no thanks. Jesus Freak replies quickly and tries again to leave. The hand, however, does not loosen up, and he cannot escape. The sirens are getting closer and he can tell that they will be upon him any second now. Max is steadfast in his resolve to thank Jesus Freak. Please, sir. I beg you. Come back tomorrow. At this point, he has to make a decision because he cannot afford to be caught by the police. It just does not seem right to incapacitate the store owner to force him to let go, and besides, who would keep an eye on the criminals until the cops arrived? I have to go now. Jesus Freak says. I know, but please come back tomorrow. I have something I want to give you. Max's hand does not loosen in the slightest. Jesus Freak realizes that this guy will not take no for an answer. The sirens are so close now that the cops could already be out of their cars surrounding the building. Reluctantly, Jesus Freak agrees. Max lets go and thanks him again as he watches Jesus Freak run off. Soon, the sound of police officers making their way around the building becomes apparent to Max. He is shifted out of his admiration and thanks for Jesus Freak and awakened to the reality that he is in danger. I'm back here! He yells. And I have a shotgun. I'm the owner. He warns. Max realizes that the police do not know what has occurred and could easily mistake him for one of the robbers. His only choice is to warn them and hope that no one gets itchy fingers. Drop the gun, sir! A voice yells from around the corner. The authority of the tone almost commands immediate obedience. Max starts to put the gun down but then realizes why he is holding onto it in the first place. I can't. I have 3 criminals held down back here. They might try something if I put the gun down, but don't worry, I won't shoot at you guys. The police answer back. We are going to come out. As soon as we do, you drop your weapon and put your hands on top of your head. We will take over from here. Max acknowledges them and complies with their request. Their interaction goes smoothly. After confirming his identity, they gather his story of what happened and what a story he has to tell. He tells them of how he had the security hooked directly up to his laptop so that if something happened, he would be first to know. He tells them that when he arrived, Jesus Freak was already taking care of the crooks. He tells them how the criminal tried to take all his stuff and how he helped out with their capture. They question him about Jesus Freak, but he does not have much to tell them except that he thinks he is amazing. The 3 crooks are thrown in the police car after being separately cuffed. One of the police officers looks at the 3 and says, You thought we wouldn't catch you, didn't you, Demond? You should have stayed hidden in the lawless zone. Reggie and Phil are stunned to hear that the officer knows Mark's real name. They had been calling him Mark for years. Most everyone knew him as Mark, and that's the way he liked it. He did not want others to know his real name or information. The name Mark came up when his friends first saw for themselves how good he was at shooting handguns. They said that he can hit any mark with ease, and in most cases, they were correct. With time to aim, he can strike the X on any target, even at 60 yards, and hitting the same hole again and again was no problem for him. They called him a marksman and eventually just started calling him Mark. Mark does not even respond to the provocation of the officer. Instead, he stares straight ahead in amazement. All his plans have come to nothing, and why? Because of some unknown hero. His inner thoughts become outward words. It makes no sense. The only thing I can think is that he ain't human. I took the shot, and when he moved, I saw the hole on the other side of the wall. Why didn't he die? Why wasn't he hurt? Mark babbles to himself. His eyes are huge, like he has seen a ghost, and there is an overall look of amazed disbelief on his face. Phil sees his turmoil and tries to comfort him. You were nervous. Anyone can miss under that pressure. Not me. Mark snaps. I don't miss. You don't understand. I saw the hole when he turned to knock the gun out of my hand. It was in the wall behind him, directly where his head used to be. I did not miss. He has some kind of power. I don't know how he knew I was there, but he must be able to go invisible or something. I'm not trying to be funny, but I think you mean intangible. You know, light can't be touched, right? Reggie clarifies. You're lucky I'm in these cuffs. Mark snipes.